There are few sports that have as wide of a variety of video games as golf, and that makes sense. It's an instantly recognizable and wholly unique sport, the turn-based playstyle is accommodating for beginners and makes for an easy multiplayer mode, and there are many foundational systems and mechanics that have been established in golf video games throughout the years that make developing one easy to start. Fundamentally, a golf game's main drive outside of just simulating the real-life sport is to test a player's precision, timing, and technique, and this is typically achieved through a detailed and thorough UI, realistic physics, and controlling your swings with a power meter. These conventions can be seen even in the sport's deceptively simplistic adaptations like the Mario Golf games. Most games in the genre center on offering an authentic golfing experience, and with so little deviation, it's hard not to feel that these games are all the same, just in different coats of paint. On the opposite end, there are games that vary in the genre so much that they lose a piece of the sport's identity. Games that are fun, yes, but don't necessarily scratch that particular golf itch. For me though, it only took one recent release to strike the perfect balance. To put it in the simplest terms possible, Super Battle Golf is essentially a blend between the prestigious, high-class, precise game of golf and the unmitigated chaos of games like Mario Kart. Instead of taking turns swinging, all players play simultaneously, and instead of teleporting to wherever the ball lands for your next swing, you have to run to it. And instead of being a game just about precision, now it's also a race. Immediately upon seeing this game in action for the first time before it even released, my mind jumped back to Mario Golf Super Rush in its Speed Golf mode, which has a very similar premise. But while the concept of this mode was interesting, I ended up finding the execution to be rather lacking. It felt like the game didn't take enough advantage of the unique opportunities presented by a simultaneous multiplayer golf game. There are very few ways to mess with your opponents, so it ironically leads to a very isolated experience where every player is solely focused on their own game, which, outside of sort of streamlining an otherwise long game, doesn't really take golf in a new direction. All of this is to say that I found the idea of Super Battle Golf enticing. To expand and evolve this poorly executed concept could make for a great game, and I knew that they aced it after the very first time one of my opponents swung their golf club at me, knocking me down and leaving me stunned as they quickly ran away. Super Battle Golf integrates competitiveness in a very intuitive way. Hitting an opponent will grant you a short speed boost, which gives you a direct incentive to go out of your way to hit your opponents. Unlike standard golf, you're aiming for a high score here. Every hole rewards you with points based on your placement, where being first scores you the most, and points based on scoring a par or greater, which both emphasizes precision and speed. This is your other incentive for hitting your opponents, trying to prevent them from scoring quickly so you can make it to the hole first. And while the club is the most obvious and likely first weapon you'll see in action, the game also offers a unique selection of Mario Kart styled items. Some of them can help with your mobility, but indeed most of them let you attack your opponents. These range from distance weapons like guns to the explosive landmine which you can plant anywhere, including directly on someone else's ball. You can run people over with the golf cart or kill them with the orbital strike. And while bad aim, poor driving, and improper placement can make these items ineffective, the worst thing you can do with these tools is show mercy. After all, your opponents won't show any hesitation to you if it means getting ahead, and so the game inevitably erupts into this hilarious trading of blows. And I think it's important to address right out the gate that this system, while goofy and fun, could also appear frustrating. Hitting your opponent is fun and rewards you with speed, but being hit leaves you temporarily stunned and powerless, sometimes for a long time depending on how or where you took a hit from. If you treat the game too seriously or are just in a bad mood, all of this game's antics can be pretty rage-inducing, and it's easy to conclude that this makes the game poorly or unfairly designed.
What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
However, at the end of the day, mindset is a huge factor in enjoying certain games. While Super Battle Golf thrives off of competitiveness, it primarily lives off of your willingness to goof off and enjoy yourself. That's why I'd recommend playing the game with friends over strangers. It makes for a much more enjoyable atmosphere where losing won't take a chip off your shoulder. That said, if you're someone who can't deal with being Mario Karted without getting frustrated, this game might not be your cup of tea. I want to briefly step away from Battle Golf's multiplayer gameplay to talk more about how this game works mechanically. Like I mentioned earlier, most golf games follow noticeable design trends, but Super Battle Golf notably breaks many of these conventions to make its fast-paced gameplay more approachable. A pretty clear example of this is the game's clubs, or lack thereof. The game grants you only a single club which is used for every stroke, including putting. This obviously removes a significant component of the original sport, but it makes a lot of sense when you consider how clubs are usually implemented in golf video games. Because these games usually give you information about your stroke before you even take it, selecting your club is much less a game of strategy and more one of picking the obvious or oftentimes default option. When the game gives you the 9-iron, you use the 9-iron. In this way, consolidating the clubs into a singular choice removes what is typically a redundant mechanic. And as a sort of replacement for adjusting your power level, the game instead offers the ability to change your striking angle before you take your swing. An angle of 45 degrees gives the furthest distance, while angles above or below give the ball less carry and therefore can make it easier to time your swing when approaching the green. The swing itself is achieved through this fast-moving power meter. Simply hold the button to build power and release the button to swing. It's super easy to get the hang of. Taking a stroke, therefore, is as simple as aiming, setting your angle, and timing your power, and while in any conventional golf game this would be far too rudimentary, this system was built to take place in a chaotic and rushed environment. Good simplification has purpose, and in this case it's to account for what you might call outside factors. Instead of combating a precise and complex system in a low-stress environment, the player is challenged to combat a simple system in a high-stress environment. In layman's terms, it flips golf on its head. One extra thing I like about the swinging in this game is the perfect swing mechanic. If you manage to get exactly 100% power on your swing, you're granted a temporary speed boost, which not only adds a layer of mastery to the power meter, but also adds an interesting element to any hole's drive. In a lot of golf games, the drive doesn't matter all that much. You aren't asked to be precise and are essentially encouraged to errantly swing at full power into the fairway, but the perfect swing mechanic makes the drive far more significant by giving you the opportunity to get a nice head start. You can even start powering your swing before the match starts, allowing you to time a perfect swing the moment the game begins. Of course, there's also a decent chance a lot of your drives will end up going a bit rough if someone pulls out an item right as the match starts, but the swinging mechanics make the drive so much more exciting and impactful, and the way it uniquely incorporates some of golf's key tenets, precision and timing, while also adhering to the game's race format, is a great demonstration of the game's core. This is not a hastily crafted blend of two otherwise incompatible concepts. The developers put a lot of effort into actually conjoining a traditional golf game with a multiplayer party game, and the effort shines through in its initial install base and positive reception. That said, I do have some reservations about the game's design. As of writing, Super Battle Golf is yet to have received its first major content update, which could potentially address some of these complaints, so keep that in mind. One small thing that raised a flag for me with this game is how the par for certain holes seems a bit off. Standard golf determines par by calculating the average amount of swings required to reach the green and then adding 2 to account for putting. So for example, you should be able to get on the green in only 1 stroke on a par 3 hole, in 2 strokes on a par 4 hole, etc. Yet some holes in this game seem to have the par set a bit too harshly, with it being seemingly impossible to reach the green in the correct amount of swings. This is obviously very nitpicky, but I think the par on these holes should be altered, because as much as Super Battle Golf is about breaking the rules of golf, it's also, as I said, about respecting the rules of golf, and this particular choice doesn't really contribute to the game's competitive components. It's worth noting that the game's more unconventional design means that a lot of these holes aren't your typical golf courses, which is good in my opinion. I just believe that these holes should abide closer to golf's more traditional rules. Another issue I have with the game is the lack of wind. This is something the developers have actually addressed and are planning to implement, so this statement won't age well, but I think it's worth pointing this out to demonstrate why it's an important mechanic in golf games. Wind is beneficial because it gives each hole a sense of variation between replays. Obviously, Super Battle Golf naturally integrates variation through its chaos factor, but on the rare occasion that you can avoid the scuffle, without wind you can basically play any given hole the same way every single time. The addition of wind would also collaborate strongly with the game's emphasis on striking angles. Pitching the ball towards the ground makes the ball less susceptible to wind, while the opposite is true for pitching the ball towards the sky. So win could provide a stronger reason for a player to engage with the system depending on the position of their ball in the course layout. As I said, this mechanic is going to be implemented into the game, so I'm excited to see how it inevitably affects the gameplay, hopefully for the better. One final thing I want to comment on is the amount of holes the game offers. This is also something that the developers will be updating in the future, but I feel the current course selection is just a little too limited and can feel a bit repetitive during longer play sessions. There are 27 holes in the game currently, with 3 different biomes that each contain 9 holes. I can honestly see this game going pretty far, so while it might be more likely that the game will only have around 3 more biomes with 54 total holes by the end of its life cycle, it would be really cool if the final course count ended up being some huge number like 90 or 99, which would all but remove any feelings of repetition. At the same time, this game is really cheap, so I'd understand if there were only a few free content updates or if some extra content was locked behind DLC. Circling back on the game's party mechanics, I want to talk a bit more about strategic item usage. I think some party games find issues with implementing items, particularly how often they don't rely on strategy or skill and encourage you to mindlessly throw them around. Battle Golf's items, meanwhile, almost remind me of worms, and that isn't just because of the landmines being practically identical. There are items that you can use pretty easily, but most of the items require some form of precision, a form of strategy, or both. And this is much like how many of the items in Worms work, but unlike Worms, I find that Battle Golf's items are more interesting due to how dynamic their uses are. The elephant gun is an interesting example. It's a gun loaded with 2 bullets that gives you heavy backwards recoil whenever you fire. And so while you can just directly shoot one of your enemies, maybe even one behind you so that you can get a forward boost from the gun's recoil, you can also use it as a mobility item to cross large distances or gain some height. It's super fun to mess around with. Some items also work with one another. The coffee on its own is a basic speed boost, but use this speed boost alongside the spring shoes and the already high jump you receive will take you much further. Or you can use the speed boost while driving the golf cart and the cart will gain the speed boost instead. On the topic of the golf cart, it's definitely the game's most unique item. Because it has tangibility both to players and balls, you're able to use it in some downright cruel ways to block someone else's swing. But of course the much more straightforward option of running people over with it is just as viable. I love the landmines. You're able to plant them straight into the ground like I said, but this involves a lengthy animation. If you want something speedier, you can throw the mine out, which is far less precise but easier to act out of. If you want something more precise and long distance, you can drop the mine, charge a full swing, and aim at a player, which makes the mine fly straight towards the player like a homing missile. This is something you can do with any item and the ball. While a 110% swing without a target will just give the ball a strong veer left or right, aiming one of these swings at someone will let you make a direct hit. And if the game warns that you're about to get hit by someone else doing this, it's a great opportunity to pull out the electromagnet, which is essentially a shield. It's very tempting to use this right away when you consider just how much is constantly going on, but using it at just the right time can make a huge difference. And that's basically the thesis statement for items in this game. Their potential for strategy gives you so much agency as a player. It gives the game a high skill ceiling that's fun to engage with. And what I like best about the complexity the items provide is how little you really notice it while playing the game. Everything moves so quickly that your decisions are usually spur of the moment, which makes the game feel very spontaneous, but also straightforward. It makes the game feel approachable for a beginner because it doesn't immediately bombard you with complex strategy and decision making. Instead, you develop these strategies as you develop your knowledge of the game. And so alongside a high skill ceiling, the game also has a relatively low barrier of entry, which is the perfect balance for a game like this. Overall, the mechanical complexity and strategical depth of Super Battle Golf is incredibly fun and engaging, yet manages to not be overwhelming. It makes for a game that anyone can pick up and have a good time with. There are a few multiplayer games that have really enticed and excited me as much as Super Battle Golf. Play alone and it's this mechanically polished, though simple take on golf, but play with others and it's this finely crafted yet utterly chaotic party experience that, even with its occasional frustrations, is undeniably fun. That said, there are a couple of things that feel missing. With the promise of updates along the way, the game still has a fair way to go before it's feature complete. But even still, at such a low price, even without sales, I'd consider it an absolute steal, and so I'd highly recommend getting some friends together and taking a swing at it. And hey, if you don't find it up to par, that's okay. But to me, this is a game that's a stroke above the rest.